Hello and welcome to episode number 10 of the Wise Guys podcast. Today we have a lot of interesting debates and discussions. Thank you for the number 10, as that is how many hands it is, or fingers. Today we'll be discussing Russell Westbrook and his all-time legacy, Deandre Ayton going back to Phoenix, the biggest offseason loser in mid-July, and last but not least, a little NBA check it up. Justin, you may have a little MLB stuff, and if you do, we could talk about that because there's a pretty big MLB event this past weekend, what have you, or this week. I didn't watch it, to be quite honest with you. But we're going to start off. You didn't watch it, or you did?
Of course I watched it.
I saw who won the home run derby. I didn't see the actual All-Star game.
The All-Star game was pretty nice. The Yankee won All-Star MVP, but maybe we'll get to that later.
Yeah. So a lot of Russell Westbrook news come out of the last week, and it's just tiring. I hate talking about the same stuff when it comes to the Lakers. But with Russ, he and his agent split ways, and his agent came out afterwards with a long essay about why the two split up. And basically, what it sounded like is that he wanted Russ to stay with Los Angeles because that was his best path moving forward in the NBA to get another payday potentially and stay in the league longer. And Russ was like, nah, I want out of here. In the Summer League, he didn't go up to greet LeBron, and everyone else in the Lakers camp, all the players, coaches, and staff did. He was the only one that didn't even 90 feet, didn't even dab him up or nothing. Going alongside with that, there was this like damage control between the big three in Los Angeles. They got on a call and promised they made a vow to one another they're going to make this thing work, which is as meaningless as it gets. And ultimately, as a kid, I grew up and I started watching basketball around 2011. I saw the very end of Allen Iverson's career. I was like, who the hell is this guy? And I never got to see him just 2 years before have a borderline career year playing in Denver where he made it to the conference finals. So it was going blow to blow with Kobe Bryant alongside Carmelo Anthony. That was the real NBA finals in 2009. 2 years later, Allen Iverson was out of the league. That was it for AI. Gone. And I look at Russell Westbrook and I say, that's exactly how kids today, they're 8, 9, 10 years old, the same way I was a decade ago, are looking at him. They're saying, who the hell is this guy? This was a guy finishing top 5 for MVP 4 different seasons. He was one of the 3 or 4 best point guards in the game that, won MVP in 2016, 6 years ago. And NBA fans loved this guy. 2016, KD leaves. The Ninja Turtle, he was the one that stayed in OKC, and Mr. Los Angeles became Mr. Oklahoma. Everyone loved him because he was all about loyalty. He wanted to win in OKC. Then, as Brandon would say, he was brought back to reality. He wasn't winning nothing in OKC. Gets smacked around by Houston, Utah, Portland, 5 games, Paul George, an MVP. They still lost to Damian Lillard. Enough. We got to talk about Russell Westbrook and his all-time ranking among point guards. Guys, I've seen people say, this guy's a top 10 point guard, and I don't think he is. I went through the rankings yesterday. We're about to debate, is Russell Westbrook a top 10 point guard? I'm going to give my list, then I'll have you guys give your list. But actually, Justin, before we got started on the show, I heard you say something that it boiled my blood. I want you to give your top 10 list first because I'm wrapping up.
Okay, so before I get going, I didn't rank them in order of 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 10.
Okay.
But I just threw my point guards that I consider to be top 10 point guards. So I have Magic, I have Steph, I have the Big O, John Stockton, showing love to the Knicks, a Clyde Frazier, Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, Chris Paul, and I had Russell Westbrook on it.
Wow.
Whoa,
I did have
hold on. There's
Wow.
somebody missing from that list. That's Jerry.
Oh my goodness.
You don't have Isaiah Thomas on your top
I did
10?
not, and you know what? I'm sorry, it completely passed my mind. But okay, I could throw him up. Like I said, it's a seesaw. You can go either way. Yeah, Isaiah Thomas is an elite point guard. I'll give you that. But when I'm looking at Russ, why I say he's a top 10, I think his accolades and his stats kind of speak for themselves. He's the most athletic, I'd say the most explosive point guard that we've ever seen touch a basketball. And I think over the last couple of years, I'd say maybe 2, 3 years since he started to decline. Am I right?
Roughly. Yeah.
Roughly, right?
About 3 to 4 years, I would say more.
So on this decline, we've seen some MVP flashes, and then we've also seen some what the hell are you doing, Russ? Like, we've seen a lot, but like you mentioned earlier, John, 8 and 9-year-olds aren't going to remember the Russ that was dominating the league just 5, 6 years ago. I think Russ is probably one of the most elite players to touch a basketball. And I just think we disrespect him because of everything that has been going on the last couple of years. So, yeah, I do think he's a top 10, top 12 point guard. But for the sake of my list, I actually have him at 10.
Brand, before you go, I want to say something. How I rank players, the most important thing is we got to stack these guys up to their contemporaries. If we don't, the newest model of a player is always going to be better than the previous one. So for me, it's all about what did you do in your era? How did you change basketball? What is the NBA without you? Is the story, is it going to be told without you if we just take you and we delete you from the file? And last but not least, do they make their team and their teammates better? Are they easy to work with? And do they open the floor? Do they create plays? We're talking about point guards. It's all about making your group better. Brand, you want to go with your top 10 first? Because you had a stronger reaction than me.
Yeah. So I don't know where to attack Justin's first. I don't know.
Before you go, let's just remember
Thomas.
I listed 8 point guards. So there was room for a Jerry West or Isaiah Thomas in my ranking.
Well, okay.
Before
I'll just give you my top 10 real quick. This is in order, so from 1 to 10. I got Magic Johnson. Obviously, I mean you can't. He's in my top number 4, for all-time NBA players in my opinion. He's number 4 on my list. So greatest point guard of all time, one of the greatest leaders of all time. I just think back to the stories I've heard of Magic, and the one that really opens my eyes and goes, wow, this guy was next level, is in his rookie year, they made it to the finals. And he was the finals MVP with Kareem playing with him. Kareem missed a game and he had to jump in as center, and he still dominated the game. That just blows my mind. Magic made everybody better, like John said. Leader, he knew how to get people involved. He and even the off the court stuff where his personality was just like when Magic like I've heard, just when Magic walks in the room, everybody just feels uplifted and better about themselves because he just brings that out of them. It's just, he personifies point guard. Number 2, I got to give it to him, Steph Curry. I think I have him number 9 in my top 10 players of all time. So second greatest point guard of all time, in my opinion. Not much to really speak. I mean, greatest shooter of all time, greatest 3-point shooter of all time, one of the greatest free throw shooters of all time, revolutionized the NBA. What can you not say about Steph Curry? Number 3, I got Isaiah Thomas from the Detroit Bad Boy Pistons. Yeah, I just when I hear the stories about Isaiah Thomas, another one that I go back to is hearing about him scored 25 in the third quarter of the Game 6 of the NBA Finals in 1988 with a high ankle sprain. And I think I've heard some sports media guys talk about it who were like in the locker room after that game. And I feel like they've said, I think that this was the game where Isaiah Thomas's ankle was like a freaking cantaloupe. It was just insanely bad. He was a 2-time champ, finals MVP, low turnover guy, didn't make mistakes, excellent playmaker, defender at the highest level, toughness personified, and he had a deadly mid-range jump shot and can make his outside shots when needed. Number 4, I got CP3, Chris Paul. This is just it. If it wasn't for Magic Johnson, who kind of changed the game and revolutionized being a 6'9" point guard, like those don't come around every freaking Christmas. Chris Paul is like the guy you look to and say, wow, this is a pure point guard. That's why his nickname is Point God. This guy is just special. Defense, pitbull. He could do it all, playmaking, leadership. And we've seen, just to touch on, like we've seen from when he leaves the Clippers and goes to Houston, the first year there, they come within a game of beating the Big Four Warriors. In Houston, he goes down. If he doesn't go down, we might be having a different discussion, and the history of the NBA might have been changed where KD and the Warriors become failures that year. and Houston beats them. Then he goes to they go again with Houston. They don't do as well in the play. I think they make the second round and get bounced. Then he gets shipped off to OKC for Westbrook, and nobody, and I mean nobody, expected him to do what he did with OKC. They all thought lottery team. They're getting a lottery pick. They're going to be one of the worst teams in the NBA. And then guess what? He makes it to the playoffs. And not only does he make it to the playoffs, but he goes against that Houston team that he was just traded against and takes them 7 games with that OKC team. Westbrook wouldn't have been able to do that if the roles were reversed. Then he goes to the Suns and makes it to the finals their first year, goes 6 games with the Bucks. That was just, I mean, that was more just about Giannis, in my opinion, because that was Giannis's coronation, as Giannis has arrived now. Like this, he's got next, if not now. Then they go on this year. I know they flamed out in the their last series in the playoffs against the Mavericks, I believe. But he had an elite series against the Pelicans, I think, right? Their first series against the Pelicans.
You're talking about Chris Paul in 2022, right? Where he had the game where he went 14 for 14 with 28 points.
Yeah. So and they had a franchise winning career record with 64 games, I think. 64 games wins for the Suns. So he's number 4 in my list. To round out the 5, I got John Stockton. Then I got Steve Nash, Jason Kidd, Gary Payton, Oscar Robinson, and then Jerry West.
That's pretty good. So here's the way I look at it. There's tiers to greatness. And for me, I got 4. Then you got a 5th. You got 5th tier. Tier 1, I'm going to order them. Number 1's Magic. Number 2, Steph. I think Steph, by the end of his career as a 3-time champ and 2-time MVP, if he gets one more Finals MVP in there, he's only 1 shy of Magic, and he'll have just 1 less title. And when you look at how Magic saved the NBA, that's his unique calling card. With Steph, it's how he revolutionized basketball. 9-10 years ago, when a kid stepped into an open gym, 10-year-old, they're taking 15-foot jumpers. Now they're stepping out beyond the three-point line. There's a reason for that. It's basically screwed with the way, almost in a way, that we kind of develop these kids, how great a player Steph Curry is. Not only the best shooter, but the greatest player to an individual franchise. The Warriors were bottom feeder, and a decade later, they're one of the greatest dynasties in sports history. Mm-hmm. And no matter what the parts were around Steph, they didn't need a star hunt. They got Kevin Durant, and guess what? It didn't matter. They could still win without him. 2 with him, 2 without. But those titles don't matter. It doesn't matter with Steph. He's just one of one. That's my first tier. Second tier, I got Jerry West at number 3. I'll give my diatribe afterwards. Number 4, I got CP3. Number 5, I have Oscar Robertson. And it was tough. Number 6, at the end of this, I got Isaiah Thomas. Those 4 players are all in the same group. Then we get to the third tier. I have Steve Nash, number 7. John Stockton, number 8. I messed that up. I have Gary Payton at number 8 and John Stockton at 9. I forgot Gary. We're going to talk about him. And number 10, I got Jason Kidd. Right outside of that, there's Russ, Bob Cousy, Walt Frazier, your boy, Chauncey Billups, Finals MVP, Dame Lillard, Dennis Johnson, Sidney Moncrief, Kevin Johnson, blah, blah, blah. I made a mistake in there. I think Gary Payton all time is greater than John Stockton. And when you look at it, I think Gary is honestly the most underrated NBA legend. This is the best defensive guard in my opinion, I would say of all time. He won Defensive Player of the Year. Yep. It didn't happen until Marcus Smart this last season, but the difference was, Gary was, the defense. You know, there was Nate McMillan and other all-time defenders in there, but look at that Celtics defense and Marcus Smart. They were literally complete. They were whole. Gary Payton was giving MJ trouble in the finals. And at the same time, he was averaging 20-8 in the regular season and 20-6 in the postseason. He could give you a bucket. He was one of the best playmakers in the game. And the thing was, he stuck around long enough to be a mentor on that Miami team as the oldest player in that group in 2006. Sure, well removed from his prime, but he was big time. The leadership, the respect. Respect matters. If players don't respect you, how are you an all-time top 10 player to me? And the league not only respected Gary Payton, they feared him on the offensive end. That, to me, is what makes you special. That is his defining characteristic. And that's why I got him above John Stockton. Stockton is one of the most overhated, and I think maybe slightly overrated players. if you only look at the steals and assist records, I think you're selling short the player he was. He has all-time longevity. I mean, you talk about 13 years, a total of 4 missed games. That's why he has all those records. He was an all-time off-ball defender, and he built, in my opinion, the best pick-and-roll duo ever with Karl Malone. I mean, that is his case. He never was an MVP candidate, which is why I have Steve Nash, who finished top 2 3 times ahead of him. That is insane. Neither guy continued that in the postseason. And when looking at the playoffs, Steve Nash was better than John Stockton. Gary Payton was better. Isaiah was better. And certainly, to all the people out there that think John Stockton is ahead of Chris Paul at times because they both have longevity and Stockton has records, give me a break. Go look at their playoff records and come back to me. Go look at their playoff stats and come back to me and let me know, do you still think that? Because I think you're out of your mind if you have John Stockton in your top 5 personally. There's absolutely no ways ahead of Isaiah Thomas, no shot Chris Paul, and you're out of your mind if you don't have Jerry West in your top 4. Jerry is, to me, the most complete guard pre-MJ. I mean, what do you want in a guard? Playmaking. Later in his career, he was terrific. Awesome teammate. His impact, the clutch shots, the toughness, he leveled up in the playoffs, scoring, one of the best shooters of all time. You put Jerry West, the player he was in the 60s, with a 3-point line, the dude was still averaging 36 and 6 in the postseason without it. They didn't make an all-defensive team until he was 30 years old, and he still has 5 of them. Think about how insane that is. And sure, he made it to the finals 9 times, and he's 1 of 8 there. He ran into the greatest defense of all time 6 times. The 2 other times against the Knicks had the best defense in the NBA with Clyde, Willis Reed, Dave DeBusschere. That was another all-time defense. Only one of those teams didn't have an all-time elite defensive unit. And beyond that, as a point guard, he was more of a combo, sure. He fit in with all kinds of stars. Elgin, Goodrich, Wilt. What does Jerry West not have to be in your top 4? Like, what are we missing here? Tell me. He won Finals MVP on the losing team. That's the last. I'm sorry.
Do you want to go, Justin, or
Bro? Like I said, it didn't cross my mind. I think I'm a recency bias kind of guy, and I'm going by my era. There's a reason why people hate having all-time debates with me, because when we talk about Jordan and LeBron, I'm like, I'm sorry, I didn't see Jordan. I didn't get to witness it. I didn't watch 60s basketball. Quite frankly, no offense, I really don't care. I really just care about what are you giving me today? What did you give me throughout my lifetime? What did I see? Which is why I have so many vivid memories of Russ just exploding to the lane and throwing it down. He's had some big moments in OKC. When KD left that season afterwards, I feel like that's how we should be looking at Russ's legacy. I feel like that's how we should remember him, as that guy that is loyal, that guy that tried his best to put OKC on his back. You know, that's how I just view Russ in my eyes.
He was able to, like, here's the case of Russell Westbrook. He's an MVP, which is one of the most controversial ones, because his case was he had the most triple doubles in a season, and in a Western Conference where him and Harden were the 2 front runners, Westbrook had by far the worst team, which just isn't true. Westbrook had a top 10 defense. Victor Oladipo, Steven Adams. He had big men. Adams was perfect for him. Andre Roberson. There just wasn't a whole lot of offense there. And with Russ, they're the 16th ranked offense. With Harden, he had a bunch of role players around him too. Eric Gordon, Lou Williams, some bigs that were just rotation level players. And Harden had a way better team in the playoffs. He smoked him in 5 games. Westbrook had like 37, 14, and 8 in that series. He also shot below 40%. And here's my problem with the triple doubles. I do not care at all. It means nothing to me. And this is the reason why. Do you want your point guard to rebound? Yes or no?
you don't need it?
You don't need it. No, as long as it's being made up by your big man.
When you have a 6'3" point guard that can't shoot the ball and needs it in his hands, and he's also chasing rebounds, do you want that on your team when you have guards, all-time ones in Jerry, Steph, who don't need the ball in the hands? They can sprint up the floor, play off ball, they can space it for their teammates, and open up the game. Because here's the issue. If you're an all-time point guard, you got to make your teammates better. You're not if you're just nabbing rebounds in the centers. That's their job. You actually have to be able to play with and without the ball. You have to make those guys better. You don't need your point guard to rebound. If it's Luka Doncic, that's different because he has led the most efficient offense of all time. In 2020, the Mavericks had the best defensive rating ever. So you want the ball in his hands. So that's why him getting 8 or 9 rebounds at 6'9" It makes more sense because he's guarding wings. Russell Westbrook is just flying in there. A lot of the time, he's not boxing out. Defensively, as his career has gone on, after being a Pac 12 Defensive Player of the Year in college, he's become a negative defender with his usage rate. He falls asleep, he loses track of guys, he always goes for steals, they often beat him off the dribble. So he's a negative defender. He gets 7 to 11 rebounds a game. You don't want that. He gives you 20, or this season, 18 points to 30. You don't want that. Your ceiling with Russell Westbrook as your number one is so low. Did you know that after Kevin Durant left him in 2016, his playoff record is not only below 500, but he is 8-21 in the playoffs. The one playoff series he has won the last 7 years was one where they won in spite of him missing over half of it. And the 4 games he missed versus OKC, his old team in 2020, guess what? They won more playoff games in that 4-game stretch than Russell Westbrook did the previous season, where, Damian Lillard said bye-bye. And you go a step further, Chris Paul with a bunch of guys around the league, a young SGA, Danilo Gallinari, players just thrown around. They won more playoff games in that one series than Russell Westbrook did the last 2 years with Paul George, who was an MVP candidate. And so we know Russell Westbrook can't play with other stars. If your record is 8-21 when you spent those years with Paul George, James Harden, LeBron, who you missed the playoffs with, there is no shot you are a top 10 point guard. After the age of 27, he has basically done nothing in the postseason. He chases rebounds. Sure, he gets assists. He's a very good playmaker. And guess what? He still averages 4.5 turnovers. He provides zero gravity. He doesn't make his teammates better. The reality is he never has. He was very good in the 2012 playoff run. He had moments early on in his career. But quite frankly, after Patrick Beverley took him out right by the scores table in 2013, he has done nothing in his career to impress me. He won MVP when it shouldn't have even went to him. It should have went to James Harden. And the truth be told, I would rather have Dennis Johnson all time over Russell Westbrook. That is the Finals MVP. He has been to the Finals 6 times on 2 different teams. All-time defensive player. He made players better. He was a floor raiser in a way. He helped teams win a championship. He was a ceiling raiser. Russell Westbrook could never be number 1 in an NBA team. He could never win a Finals MVP. He can't be your best player. And guess what? As he's shown us, he can't even ride the coattails of an MVP. So if he's not good enough to be number 2, he can't be number 3 because of his personality, and he can't be number 1. How on earth is he a top 10 point guard? I have him at number 11. Honestly, I may even take Bob Cousy over him because he has 6 NBA titles on an all-time Celtics team. He has fit in with other stars. He has made it work. He has all the assist records, blah, blah, blah. There is absolutely no way you could sell me on John Stockton being worse than Russell Westbrook. Give me a break. Russell Westbrook may be the most overhated NBA player of all time, but the reality is he's also one of the most overrated by so many NBA fans because he has, once again, done nothing to win championships. This last season, he got to play with LeBron James. Think about it this way. He has played with the best player of his era in LeBron, the second best in KD, one of the 5 best in James Harden. The only players he hasn't got to play with are Kawhi Leonard, who, guess what? Kawhi didn't want to play with him for these very reasons. When Russell Westbrook called him, he was like, okay, I'll take Paul George. I'm good. And Steph, because why on earth would Steph want to play Russell Westbrook? You got to play Paul George, a top 10 player. And guess what? His record in the playoffs is worse than Ricky Rubio's. Ricky Rubio's outplayed him in moments. I can't even speak.
I feel attacked.
He is so overrated. I don't understand why the triple-doublers make... It's like a dead end. It's like you go on a long road trip, you see a bunch of awesome sights, and you're still 30 minutes out of where your destination is. You just arrive at a dead end. Because those triple-doubles don't lead to winning. I'm not saying they're empty stats, because it's so hard to get a triple-double. He's so athletic. He's so skilled as a passer. And he still doesn't make his teammates better because of his personality. It's Wilt Chamberlain-like in a way where he cares about the stats almost too much. And the reality is he's not a winner. He never has. He's not adaptive. He's never made his teammates better for the last 7-8 years. And truth be told, I don't want him on my team. And now as a defense, at 33 years old, I laugh at him. I don't take him seriously. He is a joke to me if I'm playing against him. You got rookies going to the league making fun of him for being a brick machine. This is not an all-time top 10 player. And quite honestly, while he is a legend, like I said before, this isn't a true point guard. I mean, he doesn't make his...
Okay. So my only thing is, so I hear everything that you're saying, but my one gripe with it, and this is even goes for you, Brandon, is we mentioned the hate of Russell Westbrook. You just went on this whole tangent about how much you pretty much dislike the guy, but you still have him ranked in your top 12. So putting him in the top 10 really isn't that inconceivable.
The only reason why I do is because production. But the more you think about his production, it doesn't lead to anything. Like, he has the triple-double record. I
So
think
then
that's
he
a very
can't be
hard
in your
thing.
top 12. He can't be in your top 12. The way that you're talking about him, he has to be well below that.
I got Dennis Johnson at number 16, and the more I think about it, I say to myself, well, Dennis Johnson accomplished way more. And even a Damian Lillard or a Chauncey Billups, like, those guys are in the same exact tier as Russell Westbrook, and depending on what you value, they can be behind him, they can be ahead of him. For me, production matters. That's a part of this, which is easy. Why you can say Russell Westbrook's an all-time point guard, and you can't dispute that. It's hard to average 30 a game, even if you're inefficient at it. It's hard to get 8 to 13 to 12 assists because not many players can do that, even if you're averaging all the turnovers. And it's hard to get rebounds as a point guard. But like I said before, that doesn't make my team better. It makes my team worse because if you can't space the floor and you have no gravity, you're a 6'3" point center. And as Russell Westbrook has lost that athleticism, come on, give me a break. To me, if I'm defending him, I don't take him seriously. I say to my center, go sit in the paint. He'll come. He'll probably miss the layup at this point because he's shooting 58% from at the rim. Like, he hasn't put any fear into my heart. If I could give him some compliments, he's one of the best bank shot makers in the game post Tim Duncan. He has a family, he has a wife, and he's a married man. He's got kids. I credit him for all of those things. But as a player in the basketball court, he's stubborn, he's naive, he won't accept the player he is. He's dismissing anything. Like, he has all the opportunity. Like, how many players have played with KD, LeBron, Harden, and PG? And they have, guess what? More first round exits than, non first round exits. That's pretty insane.
So, okay. So first off, I just want to say, well done, sir. You hit on a lot of points there, and a lot of them I completely and 100% agree with. I do want to say, I mean, you did clear it up later on when you talked about triple doubles, that you don't want to discredit them, but you want to. There's a story behind them, and they don't meet. And I agree, they are completely overvalued now, and I think it's because they didn't happen like a lot for a very long time. Like, they really started getting a lot of traction when Westbrook started, looking like he could do it for a year. That's when everybody was like, "Oh, triple doubles, triple doubles, triple doubles," But like, they mean something and they also don't mean something. I remember that first year he did average the triple double. I think it was, so he had 42 triple doubles, I think, that year.
Mm-hmm.
So there's 82 games, and I'm pretty sure they were like 41 and 41, maybe. I think they finished something like that. And it was like basically like when Westbrook has a triple double, they win, and when he doesn't, they lose. So it meant something for that team, but then it just kind of fell apart in the years um after that. But again, with and I'll just say another thing on Westbrook. You're completely right about like not willing to change, not willing to accept the role, stubbornness. I mean, I just think back to the end of this season. Excuse me. When Vogel was on his way out, and everybody knew it. Everybody was talking about it from like a quarter through the season. Everybody was like, okay, when is Vogel's time is running out? When is he going to get fired? Are they going to do it midway through the season, All Star break? Are they going to wait till the end? They waited till the end, and then he got let go. And then Westbrook goes on this tangent of just burying the guy, blaming Vogel for everything, and it was like, you really want to blame Vogel? Like, if it was up to Vogel, I'm pretty sure he would have had you on the bench, you accepting the role of being a bench guy in the sixth man. But he got pressured from upstairs, and they were like, "Oh, we're paying this guy a lot of money, dude. He needs to be on the court starting." His hands were tied, so he had to play you. So if it felt weird and uncomfortable, it's probably because he was weird and uncomfortable because he was in a tricky situation. But back to what Justin said about Jerry West and not really seeing people play and whatnot. I agree with that to a point. Like, I have to give all these guys, all the old guys, the respect and love and admiration for what they did. Yeah, we can't go back and watch every game or whatever, or just like big games and whatnot, all of them, because it would just take forever. You can watch highlights and stuff, but you're not getting the full picture because you're not seeing their low moments, their high moments, the in-betweens, all that, the ups and downs of basically a career. You're not getting that in a highlight clip of even 15 minutes. You're just seeing the best of them. But I do agree with it up to a point where it's like, for me, in the 60s and the early to mid 70s and then even before the 60s, I do kind of put a little asterisk on it just because there weren't that many teams back then. It was before the merger. And it was a completely different game. Like, it was just diametrically opposite of what it was even in the 80s and 90s when we started getting guys like Magic, Bird, MJ, Isaiah, list goes on and on, Barkley, keep naming them, Hakeem Olajuwon, whatever, you know what I mean? So for Jerry and Oscar, and it's the same thing for my all-time list. Like, I put Bill Russell on there at number 10 just because of the respect I have, and what the old timers say about him and what basketball historians say about him. I have to give him his love and respect. And that's why I put him over Will Chamberlain, because, he beat Will in the biggest stages. So I put Oscar and Jerry on my list because of the same reason. I hear the people talk about him, and I hear the historians talk about him and the analysts, and they say these guys were they were great. They were Hall of Fame players on another level. So I have to give them their respect, but I'm gonna lean towards favoring the people of more recency. Like, I got Kid, who played late 90s, 2000s, around there. Gary Payton, same thing. Steph has been a new age player. Isaiah was 80s and 90s. CP3 was 2000s, and now Stockton 80s, 90s. Nash 90s, 2000s, and then Magic 80s and 90s. Like, I give it up to those guys because it's more recent. And it was the league was similar to what it is now. I know it's obviously the game is different, but more teams, more high. I think the real thing is more high level talent. Like, back then when West and Oscar were playing, the talent wasn't really on the like. I really honestly feel like Steph Curry would cook Jerry West.
Well, stop.
But I think that you can throw a lot of players in today's NBA. If you threw them in the 60s and the 70s, it'd be I think they dominate.
Why do we do this? Why?
What do you mean? Why do we do this?
If you're a great player, you're gonna find ways to be great in any era. And beyond that, if you take Steph, who was born and raised by Del Curry, and the '90s, one of the greatest shooters of all time, and then you put him in 1996 or 1966, yes, he's gonna be an all-time great player. But that's impossible. Del Curry was a little kid in the '60s, so you can't actually do that. Like, that logic is flawed. And if you take Jerry West, who was an all-time great player in the '60s, and he gets to grow up in the 2000s with modern technologies, science, and advancements and how basketball is played, he would be an even better player. Jerry West was an all-time shooter without a three-point line. His release, the quickness he had, he was one of the best defensive guards, one of the best playmakers, high IQ, tough, clutch.
Yeah, but wait, John, I don't want you to miss my point, because I'm not saying.
But Jerry West is different, though, is what I'm trying to tell you. Sure, I like that point. You're right about that. And I think with Oscar Robertson, he missed the playoffs 3 straight years in Cincinnati before he got to Milwaukee and won a championship his first year. That's why I have Oscar a little bit lower, because 5 of those 10 years with the Royals, he didn't have a winning record. And so you say he had all the triple-double records like Russ, but those weren't very good teams, and he didn't raise them to championship heights until he got to play with the best player in the NBA, and Kareem Abdul-Jabbar at 23 years old. And so I agree with that statement, Brandon. I don't disagree, but Jerry West is different, man. I mean, people say, he's on the logo, but it's not just the fact he's on the logo. It goes so much beyond that, and he is the exact player that would be
I feel like he's top. I'm giving him top 10 in my list. He's number 10 on my list. I feel like giving him top 10 is not a slight or anything. Number 10 out of how many point guards have played in the NBA in the history of the NBA is pretty freaking elite. Like,
I don't disagree.
It's the elite of the elites. I'm just saying, for me personally, I can't list you higher than these guys when I think back then the league was so different and the level of play wasn't at what it was in the 80s, 90s, 2000s, 2010s, and onward. I can't give you that because I feel like The game was just it
But
was
when you're looking at the greatest players, though, dude, it's not just who was the best. And Jerry was the best. He was the best guard in his era. It's how they changed basketball. It's what would the NBA be without them? If you took Jerry West out of the NBA story, the Lakers dynasty, the Lakers, the franchise would be completely different because not only are they missing one of those titles in those 9 finals appearances, that's one of their 4 or 5 best players in franchise history just deleted. And when you look at what makes a team better, he was an all-time player, top 5 for over a
yeah, but
decade,
John,
all-star every year of his
to what
career.
you said, about like the story of the NBA, all these top 10 guys, you can't tell the NBA story without them.
You
Magic, you
can tell
can't
the
tell this.
story of the NBA without Jason Kidd. You can tell it just fine.
No, you can't because Jason Kidd was a critical part of that 2011 run with the Dallas Mavericks when Dirk won the championship.
Can you tell the story of the Nets without Jason Kidd?
Yeah, because that team was one of the worst finals
And
teams
he's
of all
second
time.
all time in assists and steals. You can't tell the story without Jason Kidd. He had 100, I think it was 118 triple doubles in his career. You can't tell the history of the NBA without Jason Kidd.
I'm not trying to disrespect Kidd, but he didn't even shoot 40% in the playoffs in his career. I think he's an all-time top 10 point guard. When we look at those Nets teams, I mean, if another team from the East went to those finals, it would have been no different. The Lakers, any team from the Western Conference, they're going to smack them around. I'm not trying to take away stuff from Jason Kidd. Yeah, he's got the assist and steal records, but outside of him being, he was an MVP candidate in Phoenix in 99 and 02 in New Jersey. But when we talk about the story of the NBA, how is this player a game-changing championship guy? 2011, he was, but I mean, he was really just a shooter and like a stationary Joe Ingles chilling in the corner.
You're forgetting about all the leadership and the intangibles that he brought to the team.
That doesn't really impact the story of the league. I think it can be mostly told.
I think that does.
That impacts that championship run because without a leader and a guy like that,
you don't win.
That's harder task to win in that case.
Okay, you got it.
Dallas doesn't win without Jason Kidd.
Yeah.
That one is just, it was like, I know Dirk was the main story. Like, that's why I'm not saying, but he was integral to that championship run because you needed a leader and a veteran of his caliber at point guard.
And he was a starter on those teams. So,
I mean, we just saw the Boston Celtics without a veteran leadership point guard. Put Jason Kidd on that team. Do you think they have a better shot at winning that championship?
He can shoot it and pass. Yeah.
Yep. So, I mean, you can't, and you can't tell the story without Oscar Robertson and Jerry West either. I mean, Jerry West is the logo, for God's sakes. You can't. But I'm gonna lean towards more of the guys that have been in more recent NBA because of the talent level around them and what they had to play against.
I just don't think you see a Steve Nash without John Stockton. I don't think you see a Stockton without Jerry West. And you have to pay homage to how they stacked up to their contemporaries. I think West, he impacted the game so much. And I was wrong about Jason Kidd. He does play a role in the NBA. It's just smaller to me than some of these other guys I have in a tier above him. You can barely tell with Kidd because of that 2011 run, and he was an MVP candidate 2 times, top 4 or 5. And beyond those 2 things, he was a player that actually developed his game and enhanced it, unlike Russell Westbrook, who this whole discussion's about.
Yeah.
He went from being called Acing Kid without the J to an actual good shooter that was
shooting the J.
Yeah, he was knocking down 3-point shots.
Here's the thing that I read, right? So when he retired, he ranked 3rd all time in 3-pointers made.
Mm-hmm.
When he retired. So he was able to develop the jump shot, which Russell Westbrook has shown us he has not been able to do. He's not been able to change his game. When you're a point guard, and one of the first couple of things people think of about you is low efficiency, high turnover guy. That's not good at all. That's not good. This guy when in OKC through a couple of years, he was averaging over 5 turnovers a game. He came in 2nd place in turnovers this year to Trae Young, and the only reason he didn't come in first is because he didn't play the last 3 games of the season. Russell Westbrook went from shooting 80% at the free throw line for a couple years straight to now he's at 65%. I think he was ranked bottom 10 in the NBA this year in free throw percentage. He's a career 30% 3-point shooter. And I don't want to, because in his height of powers, we got to give a little respect to him because in his height of powers, he was a game changer, right? He was. You got to give it to him. He was up there with one of the most athletic point guards to ever play the game, like Justin said. Up there with guys like Derrick Rose, Ja Wall, you got to put up there. Baron Davis, I think you could put up there. Guys like that. He didn't change the game, but for that OKC team and for where Westbrook came from, like he wasn't really highly touted coming out of UCLA, I believe it was. And OKC when they drafted him, I think it was Sam Presti, felt like they had a diamond in the rough here in Westbrook. They were like, "Oh, we got this guy." And then you see what he became, a guy who could give you 25, 27 a night with 8, 9 rebounds and assists. Defensively, he was, not at the level he could have been. But you got to look at Westbrook and you got to say, I give him that credit for being able to do what he did. But you also got to look at it and say, he didn't do what was necessary in the right moments, where it's accepting your role later in your career and trying to become a more efficient and better player. Like
A player that can win championships.
a player that can win a championship.
That's what we play for. I think you really hit the nail on the head, both of you, with the athleticism and all that stuff. But that is honestly his biggest enemy. It was because of that he never actually developed the 3-point shot, the jumper. It was part of that where he became somewhat naive to the fact he wasn't a good enough player upstairs. Like, sure, you're one of the best passers and you have a good vision, but at the same time, his awareness, his decision making was always flawed. The turnover stuff, I'm not going to fault him for. And quite honestly, I'm not trying to attack Russell Westbrook's character or the person he is, the story he is as a player that was unranked, climbed all the way up to the top of a draft board, and became an MVP. I think it's an awesome story. But when people try to put him among the elite, and not only that, the players who actually accomplished the highest feats, sure, Stockton, Nash, CP, they haven't won championships, but we've all seen those guys. With Nash, I think much like Chris Paul, it's just terrible luck he never played in the finals. And with Russell Westbrook, I think his athleticism and all of those traits that made him so special is also the defining characteristic and why he never grew as a player and he actually regressed.
And John, I just want to say to what you said about not being able, because I just forgot about this. It just brought back into my head. Westbrook was in his height of powers. He was, I want to say, he was really good at that mid-range jump shot. Like he had his mid-range jumper where he'd bank it off the backboard and it would go in, right? That real like weird stop, jump up, pause for a second, and then shoot. It was a very weird jump shot, but he had that down patent in OKC for those couple of years. He did average like an 81% free throw percentage for those like 4 or 5 years.
For 9 years, eight years, he shot over 80%.
8 years. Okay. He had these traits. Traits. It just goes to something happened. Like, because you had the ability to do those things. And now it's just, you've gone from, you're like, all right, you're like a B right here in those characteristics to now you're a D. Like I think that has to go with up here. There's something going on where he's thinking too much about it. I think maybe the criticism is getting to him. Maybe, he's a very prideful guy. We know that. Russell Westbrook doesn't lack confidence, but I don't know. Maybe I can't explain it. I don't think we've ever really seen it like something like this, where the guy goes from being able to do that, like at 83% from the free throw line, to now he's shooting, I think, 65%. What happened?
As a player, I can tell you, foul shots are all upstairs. Man, that's a mental thing more than anything else. And maybe there is a block there because when you're at the line, it's a 15-foot shot, and every time you go to the line, is going to be the same. Got 7 seconds, got a deep breath, maybe a few dribbles, and it's just you passing the ball to the rim. So yeah, I think you got a good point there. That is not me trying to attack Russell Westbrook. To the Lakers faithful, the Russell Westbrook faithful, here's my Twitter. I'll link you right there if you want to come at me. I just don't think he's up there with a top 10 point guard. I think that's why he's overrated, and at the same time, he's overhated. I don't fault him for his weaknesses. I just say if we're gonna put him in the top 10 point guard discussion, we gotta talk about all of the stuff that isn't mentioned. All we focus on is triple doubles that kind of lead you to a dead end. That's maybe one of the last times we're also going to talk about Russell Westbrook because I'm kind of afraid his career might be over. And I don't say that as like, yes, he's one of my like players I root for. He was one of my favorite players.
Oh, there's a chance, though. You're right. There's a chance that
I don't
this
think his
might.
career is over. I think somebody.
There's a
What team?
chance that
Name me a team.
if he gets traded and the team buys him out,
What team is signing him? Outside of Washington, there's no team I see that's rebuilding that says we're going to take you to be a veteran leader. There's no contending team that says we're going to want your personality in our locker room. Washington is the only place that would consider it. I think there's no other option. Do you think there's any other team?
There's a chance.
Off the top of my head, no. But I mean, the guy's not 36, 37 years old. I think he could still contribute to a team. Obviously, there's a big mental thing. He needs to buy into a role. But if he can, why can't he be a solid role player for a team?
He hasn't shown it.
But then again, it's a big what if.
He's been in the league for 14 years, and he hasn't really shown anything over the last second half to say, oh.
No, but you're right. But listen, I feel like a lot of people were thinking the same thing about Carmelo Anthony. Is he going to be able to buy into a role on the bench? I'm sure. Yeah. While these are two very different players.
Dwight Howard.
Yeah. So
Andre Iguodala.
He ended up buying in. So I mean, maybe I don't know if he will, but it'd be nice if this offseason reality slaps him in the face where he sees where he's at, and maybe he can contribute to a championship team.
I really hope that is true. If he wins a championship as this like a leader in there, kind of like Gary Payton, he would be in my top 11 without hesitation, and he would be in that third tier with Kidd, Stockton. I just don't see it. I wish, but I think Russell Westbrook's let me down many times. He's not gonna let me down again. I just lost all stock. There's quite literally none left. Speaking of players with very low stocks, Deandre Ayton has been a subject of criticism and a player often thrown around by his team. Rumors, reports, we don't want you over the last 2.5-3 months. And he signed an offer sheet with Indiana because Phoenix kind of told him to. 4 years, $133 million, and the Suns matched it within minutes. After a few weeks before, John Hollinger is coming out with reports saying it seems more likely than not Phoenix doesn't want him back. And now he's going back to a place in Phoenix where Monty Williams, the last time we saw him, the two of them together, he was saying, you quit on us before he benched him in Game 7 in the second round. After the Suns broke their franchise record in wins and quite honestly looked like the best team in basketball that would be upset if they didn't go all the way to the finals for a second straight year. And DeAndre, I got a lot to say. Justin, we actually didn't talk about this before the show, but I want to know your take. With this new contract, as Chris Paul ages, will DeAndre be an all-star on it in the Western Conference? And the next step of that question, next evolution is, will he be the number 2 alongside Devin Booker for the years to come? Because it doesn't seem to me like those two have a really strong relationship together from the outside looking in.
Yeah, I think that's a big concern. Personally, I don't think I feel like Phoenix was in a situation where could they have gotten anything better than DeAndre Ayton this offseason if they let him walk? Probably not, unless you were acquiring KD, but that seems already off the table. So at the moment, the way I look at Phoenix, I feel like that championship window is really just closing. It's Ayton doesn't, to me, he doesn't seem to be that guy that's gonna step up and get you the big boards and put up those points. And like you said, while CP3 is aging, Devin Booker and Ayton don't seem to have that relationship in order to mesh into a championship team when CP3 is out of the picture. So really, I feel like the Phoenix roster, it's filled with tons of question marks. I felt like they should have been jumping to get KD to get this guy out of there. Because at the moment, this isn't a championship team to me. Can they get yes. But
so, I mean, I think they were jumping at KD. It's just that they kind of handicapped themselves. Because I believe that they had the opportunity to sign DeAndre Ayton last year to the extension and the max contract. It would have been for cheaper money, I believe, than this time.
So
they would have been able to include him in the trade for KD because the contracts wouldn't mess up with the Ben Simmons, I believe.
So it would have been 5 years. So this is 4 years, and that would have been 178. So right around the same, a little bit more money because the Suns could offer him an extra 5%.
Okay.
The difference, though, was DeAndre wanted the full 5-year max.
Yeah.
They were offering a similar deal to this, where it's 4 years worth, a little bit more. So you were right on that. This is a little bit less. I just want to say that for
So
you.
yeah. So I mean, they shot themselves in the foot. You know what I mean? Like they couldn't, and now they can't trade him until January 15th, I believe. So, and they had to match the deal from Indiana, because if they lose him for nothing, then it's just Chris Paul and Devin Booker, and that's not going to be a team that's going to compete with these other guys. You need Deandre Ayton. He is for what he's not, and we understand he's not. He's not a very high motor guy. The intangibles are questions there. I mean, Monty Williams really like question. I mean, he benched him in the fourth quarter, I believe, in
First half, I
in
think,
the
honestly.
first half. Sorry.
I stopped watching after the first quarter. I was watching. I was tuned down and started doing my work.
Yeah.
It's done.
So, I mean, it's a question mark. Can that be corrected? Yeah, you can learn that. You can learn to have a high motor. It's all about the want to. Do you want it? Is it in here? You got to have a conversation with yourself when you're alone and be like, do I want this, or do I just want to be Because DeAndre Ayton, I think if he wants it, he can be a 23, 24 point a game scorer with 11 to 12 rebounds a game and a block and a half a game for a season. I think that can be his ceiling, maybe even higher. Because I mean, without the high motor, he's what, 17 and 11 right now with a block a game, easy right there. So I mean, Phoenix has really just messed themselves up. I mean, they had the opportunity. I mean, I think Ayton, Mikal Bridges, probably Cameron Johnson, and a couple first round picks for Kevin Durant. I think that would have been a very enticing offer, especially from the deals that are getting thrown out that are not looking that good for KD. So I mean, as far as the window closing, I think until CP retires, the window is open. Because Chris Paul is still that guy. I understand he flamed out in the last series that we saw him in. But the series before that, we saw him completely ball out and play some of his best games he's ever done in his career. So we got to, level it out right there. So I'm going to give him another shot this year and see what he's got, Chris Paul, to see if the age has really caught up to him, which I don't think it really has. I can't really explain what happened. I'm just going to say it was an off series for Chris Paul, and he'll return to form this upcoming season. So, but yeah, when Chris Paul does retire, we're going to see those Suns go back to what the Suns were before Chris Paul was there. And that's not a playoff team.
Ooh.
And probably fighting for a play-in tournament.
We'll talk about Chris Paul in a second. Do you guys have a comparison for DeAndre Ayton? Sort of an analog that he reminds you of? I have one.
Let's hear it.
A quicker LaMarcus Aldridge. The difference is he's much better on defense.
Yeah, but also LaMarcus is a better shooter all around.
I have a couple of stats for y'all. DeAndre, he's not the type of player, he's not Shaq. He's not going to hit you with a post spin and dunk it in your chest. He's actually very reliant on touch. He shot 77% at the rim this last season and 56% from mid-range. 56%.
I was talking more about outside shot because LaMarcus could stretch the court.
Well, the three ball didn't really come around until later in his career, if I'm not mistaken. I may just be making that up. I'll check in a brief moment. DeAndre is one of the most unique center prospects we've seen because it was all about a center that's coordinated and has really good length. He's developed so much in terms of touch that on short rolls, when you give him the ball from 4 to 12, 14 feet, the dude's automatic. I've never seen a player outside maybe Jokic or the last decade that has as good touch while I've watched the NBA at the center position. His touch is incredible, and he's 7 foot, so you can't block it. And he's so quick with his moves. You give him the ball, he constantly relocates to make himself an outlet in the Suns' offense. It's one dribble, quick spin, post hook, fade away. It's automatic because no one can actually contest it. And if I'm an opposing center, he's straddling in a space where he's not at the rim. He's playing from like 6 to 8 feet. So if I'm dropping back, it's money every time he gets the ball in that area, that little in between spot. And with the Suns' offense, it fits in perfectly because all of those starters are elite for mid-range. Chris Paul, Devin Booker, those guys in the clutch live there. Mikel's another guy, and even Jay Crowder. I didn't even realize that until I checked on Cleaning the Glass. That shot over 50% from mid-range. So all of their starters were. That's the issue.
So I
That
got a
right
question,
there.
John.
Yeah.
So with Ayton in the fold still, do you believe Phoenix's window is still open, or?
Their window would have closed if Kevin Durant went there. Absolutely. Because their starting center wouldn't have been JaVale McGee, it would have been Bismack Biyombo. He's the guy that can give you 15 to 17 minutes. If you lose your best defender, Mikal Bridges, and Cam Johnson, you're giving up so much to get a player like Kevin Durant, who has shown us he needs all the things around him. He needs the coaching, the GM, the supporting cast. He's not actually number one when there's limits. We just saw that in Brooklyn. They didn't have that center. They didn't have those wings. Guess what? In Phoenix, it would have been the same exact thing. Is Devin Booker, when Kyrie's healthy and playing, better than Kyrie? Slightly. He's a better defender. Offensively, I would say Kyrie's more skilled.
I would take Kyrie.
Okay. That's reasonable. And Chris Paul, yes, he's better than some of those Nets guards. Not he's better than all of them not named Kyrie.
All of them.
But it's the same exact thing. You don't have the wings, you don't have the depth, you don't have the center because you're sacrificing all of that to get KD. And that's what the Nets would have wanted. Otherwise, they're saying to themselves, we got KD for 4 years. We're not trading him unless we get Bridges, Cam Johnson, and stuff when you send Deandre Ayton to another team because we don't want Ayton. But Deandre is so good. He's got the quickness, he's got the touch, and a fluidity for a big man, which is really unmatched. The issue is, as number 3, it's so tough. There's the trade rumors. Chris Bosh, Kevin Love, we were talking about Russell Westbrook before. All of these centers, they are the scapegoat when it doesn't go well. Chris Paul and D-Book have 2 points in the first half. We're pointing the finger at DeAndre Ayton. That's what it seems like to me, when in reality, he's the one that feeds off of those two because the third man is always going to be the one that's playing off of them. He's feeding off of how well they play. And when Chris Paul in the postseason has those elite moments, so does DeAndre Ayton. The issue with Chris Paul, whether it's the injuries, bad luck, his body at 36 years old, Chris Paul is never in his career, and odds are, because we've seen it for the last decade, he can't do that. He can't be that top 10 main man for an entire playoff series. He can do it in moments. For a series, he can do it. But once you get 3 rounds in, when the dude's playing 70 games in the regular season, which I guess is a pride thing because he wants to do that and show he's healthy and he can play all the games, every time his body breaks down. And when you have defenses that know exactly what the Suns are trying to do, which is get to their spots in mid-range, and they're athletic, they're physical, and they jam in, the Suns, I don't know if you guys realize this, their shot diet is absolutely screwed. They don't get to the foul line. Like Ayton, he gets to the foul line less than 2 times a game. Think about how bad that is for a center. Because all of his shots are just, floating jumpers and jump hooks. He doesn't actually take it 2 guys, which, hey, works. He's efficient. But when you need reliable offense, most of their shots, 41% of them, almost half come from mid-range. And that's so much different than the rest of the league. It's just the fact they're so good at it in the regular season, they're able to win so many games. But in the playoffs, defenses are aware this team wants to get to their spots. And when they really put pressure on CP, they attack him defensively. He's small, he's old. And most of all, they say, you're going to have to beat us by stressing yourself out, trying to create your shot off the dribble. Look at Boston. They're trying to get to the rim and get 3-pointers. With Phoenix, the 3-pointers aren't opening up because defenses are making them consistently. You're going to have to beat us off the dribble. You have to create your own shot. It's really tough as an offensive player when you have to work for those opportunities for a 2-point shot. It's worth 1 less point than a 3. So for offense, it's so much less efficient and it wears your body down sooner just because of the fact it's not threes and layups, it's mid-rangers. And we saw that in the finals in 2021 when Drew Holiday put the pressure on Chris Paul. It was so much tougher for them to actually get their shots off, and it wore them down as the series went on.
So for this last season, I think that you're right with people pointing the finger at DeAndre Ayton. I mean, to me, I don't know why the finger pointing didn't go at Devin Booker. That's who everybody calls the best player on the team, right?
Mm-hmm.
That's who I hear. I mean, I think it's Chris Paul because when Chris Paul got there, that's when they became great.
They almost made the playoffs with Ricky Rubio.
Huh?
They almost made the playoffs with Ricky Rubio when Andre only played 40-something games.
Yeah, but I know that, but Chris Paul is the guy who got them over the hump.
Yeah.
They took that jump because of Chris Paul. But it was supposed to be Devin Booker supposed to. It's like when with LeBron in LA and they got AD. LeBron's aging. AD, you're supposed to take the reins and become the best player on the team. Chris Paul comes in. Chris Paul can do it now. Guess what, Devin Booker? You're supposed to take the reins, and it's supposed to be your team now. Where were you? If you want to start having these being in these conversations of top 10 in the league right now, guess what, buddy? You got to become the ipso facto best player on that team. You didn't produce. So, I mean, if this is Chris Paul's last season, he's gone next year. And then let's say DeAndre Ayton is traded during the All-Star break this year, and it's just Devin Booker. I mean, what are you going to get for DeAndre Ayton, really? Not going to get a player on Chris Paul's level to match with Devin Booker. So Devin Booker is going to be stuck in Phoenix now. He's going to be like Damian Lillard and Bradley Beal in Washington.
At least at least his coach isn't Scott Brooks. His
coach is great, but the coach can only do so much when it's just one great player, and especially when you're in the West.
Yeah.
Sorry, I got tongue twisted there. When you're in the West with all those playoff teams. So it's open for this season, in my opinion, because they still got that big three. But let's see what moves they make, because I know they still want Kevin Durant. Maybe they can make a move.
It's over.
We'll see what happens.
They're not getting KD.
Yeah, I don't think so. I don't think so either. But
I think KD stays in Brooklyn.
Yeah,
So
there's a chance about a lot.
Yeah, there's a bigger chance of that happening now. But I know there's been a lot of rumors of Pat Riley is freaking reaching. He's grasping at every straw in the book to try and get like a four team trade to get in there to get either Mitchell or KD. I know he's scrambling right now. But I think all fingers point to DeAndre Ayton is possibly getting traded at the All-Star break. So
let me say something about Booker, though.
Yeah.
We're going to come back to it in a second. I feel like I'm not critical on him. Justin, you're a Knicks fan. You've seen this dude come into the Garden and give you all 30 and end you. Like, when you're watching him in those games, what are you thinking to yourself?
About Devin Booker?
Yeah.
I think he's one of the most explosive scorers in the league. I love watching him play, man. Just you give him the ball, you can get 40 a night from that guy. You just never know. He's like this microwave. The second he's on, you just can't stop him. Like you said, I've seen it firsthand, unfortunately, in the Garden, but I've seen that actually from many people more than Booker when they come to the Garden. So, but I love D Book, and as a number two, he's an awesome number two. He's not. Do I find him to be a number one? No, I don't think so.
Here's
but
his case. He's in that Lakers series. He was the best player in that. Between LeBron, AD, sure, he was injured, but he was better than LeBron in that series. He was the best player there. Do you disagree?
No, not at all. I'm with Brandon. I'm with Brandon where he says not yet as the number one. I don't want to just
last series.
Like him.
I do give him a little bit of a break because he had the hamstring injury he came back from. He was supposed to miss over a week, and he did miss 9 days. I wonder if that alone, there's some COVID stuff the Suns are dealing with. I'm sure playoff teams are, and they just don't report it, so they don't lose their best player. I do wonder if the hamstring and COVID stuff was part of the reason why he shot 29% to end that series. That's kind of why I'm not too hard on him. And I say, okay, we've seen him do it against the best in the game, but he actually has to do that for an entire playoff run. As we saw at Tatum, it's the same thing. Those young guys in the 8th best player to 15th in the league, Trae Young, you can do it for a series, but when you're looked at as a superstar, we expect you to do that for 3 series in a row, 4. And I think for Devin Booker, he can do that and average 30 a game for a series, but the next step for him as he's continued to grow as a defender, a decision maker, if he wants to be a top 8, top 9 player in the game, he's going to have to do that for an entire playoff run. 2021, he was playing with a broken nose. I think he kind of did it then. I honestly feel like that was when he proved himself. Do you guys disagree? Because the more I think about it, playing through a broken nose is tough. You're playing with that mask on, it's different. That was his first time in the postseason at 24.
Mm-hmm.
That didn't improve at all?
For me, no. I mean, no. Devin Booker is a great player in the NBA right now. It's just that if he wants to enter that discussion of top 10, it's time to take it over now, where you can carry a team as the best player on that team. I mean, in the Dallas series, I'm looking at his stats right now. I mean, 23 points a game, almost 4 turnovers a game. Shot 40% from the 3, 43% from the field.
It's how we get into that thing. He started off very strong.
Yeah. Yeah. And then he really like kind of faded out towards the end.
Talking all that game, and Luke says, "Time to show up."
Yeah. So
Over.
I mean, we all agree. I think we all agree. Luka's a top 10 player in the league.
I think he's top
I
5.
think some of you have top 5.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Top 5, yeah.
So when you're going head to head with Luka Doncic, and Luka's the only guy on that team, and you're getting beat by him, what? There's levels to this game. It's no disrespect. It's just, listen, I don't. These players, their book is open. Their story is being written right now. And guess what? The best part is they get to write their own story. Yes, there's some, things happen and whatnot that you can't control, but for the most part, you get to write your own story. That story has been written last year. The story was written. That chapter is over, and that happened. So now it's time to move on to this next chapter, and hopefully Devin Booker can take that next step to, instead of 23 a game, I'm dropping 30, 32 a game.
And you see that's what I love. D-Book is what, 24 years old?
25.
24, 20, okay, 25 years old.
He's going to be 26 in October.
Okay, I still feel like we haven't seen his best yet, and we've seen
No, he's just
moments.
entering his prime.
Yeah, so I still think, like you said, from averaging 23 a game, this guy could easily average 27, 28 a game next season.
I meant for a playoff series. Like, again, he did average 27 a game for the regular season this last year. I meant against Luka and the Mavericks, he only averaged 23 a game. But so in the playoffs, take that to the next level and average 30 a game.
Yeah. Well, he's cold-blooded, man.
He is.
That guy is cold-blooded. So I could see that next step coming. I just hope that Phoenix is gonna, be a championship contender for years to come, because they got some good pieces, man. And as long as CP3's there, you got to take advantage of it now while you can.
I think the window's closed. I think it's shut, honestly. I think the best path forward was keeping Ayton, but I don't have enough confidence in this team when I look at Chris Paul falling apart every year in the 3rd and 4th round of the playoffs. This year is the 2nd. And I say, as good as they can be in the regular season, I'm expecting them to be a top 4 or 5 team. Man, I wouldn't be shocked if they get knocked out in the 1st round next year. That window it's closed. You got the Clippers, the Nuggets, the Warriors, and so many other teams that are on the Suns level. Memphis, Dallas. Dude, I didn't even mention the Pelicans. Pelicans are going to top 25, 30 player. I'm not really worried about the Lakers, but that's another team you can put in there too. Oh, well. I'm worried about LeBron. I'm not disrespecting LeBron. I'm disrespecting Anthony Davis, who comes to camp out of shape and doesn't stay healthy. That's something disrespecting.
AD been in the gym every day, 4 a.m., baby.
Well, guess what? So is Cam Newton. How did he show off with his early gym?
That's messed up. Don't do that. Don't do that.
No need for that.
I'm not trying to diss Cam Newton, but just because you're waking up early doesn't mean you're going to change the narrative. Although Anthony Davis, I'm sure, could if he had the ethic.
Early bird gets the worm, John.
Yeah. So we talked about Anthony Davis.
We're talking about a winning franchise in the Suns last year, right? But now, John, what are we going to talk about now?
We're not going to talk about actually, you could talk about Anthony Davis and his team if you want to. The offseason, we're pretty deep into it. There's still some moves to be made. Colin Sexton was a guy averaging 24 a game on pretty good efficiency a year ago. He hasn't been signed. Carmelo Anthony, there's a lot of role players like him. They're high-profile names. There's young guys. Even Donovan Mitchell's in the trade block. You get the Utah 8 first-round picks and some young players. I think he's going to New York. But we're done talking about Donovan. We've talked about him so much.
When I saw that, I was like, Jesus Christ, Rudy Gobert.
But that
trade just killed the trade market, dude.
Those are late first-round picks as well. If they're early,
I know, but still, it kills the freaking trade market, because now it's just like nobody can get. It's hard to make a trade like that.
But does Donovan, at this stage of his career at 25, have less trade value than Paul George at 29 and 30? Does he? I think they have the same amount of value.
But that's what I'm saying. But the trade block has been, it's like the free agency. When a player comes up, maybe they're not as good as the guy before them, but they're getting the more money because it's their time. I don't like that. I actually hate that, because I think it should be like what you said, evaluated on talent level. If Aaron Rodgers is up for his max extension and he gets this money, and now Jimmy Garoppolo's up, Jimmy Garoppolo should not be making more money than Aaron Rodgers just because it's his turn. There's a hierarchy to this. There should be a mid-level, and I know that's football, but it's the same concept for NBA.
So, speaking of off-season moves, I want to ask you guys what team has lost the most this offseason? What team has took the fattest L and they're headed in a direction that you don't like? Justin, you're worried about the Knicks. We're going to start with you because I don't think the Knicks should be one of your teams.
It's not the Knicks. It's not the Knicks.
Cool.
Because I don't want to talk about the Knicks.
It's not the Knicks.
Cool.
It's a loser franchise to me that I feel like has no direction, and that's the Wizards. I'm just like so baffled by them re-signing, giving Beal that extension. I feel like they should have traded Beal a long time ago. There's no way this team is competing for anything other than a bottom playoff seat if they're lucky with Beal making that kind of money. I mean, do you really believe in a trio of Porzingis, Kuzma, and Beal?
I think Kuzma was pretty good this last season.
I think Kuzma, but I'm just saying, that no matter how good he was, that's not a team that's ready to make another step. I just feel like Beal's not a 1A championship guy, and maybe this might be a hot take, but I don't even know if he's a sufficient number 2 at the moment, given how deep talent is across the league. So I don't know. Washington should have had a bundle of assets from this Beal trade. So if they would have dealt him, I felt like they'd be in a better position. Prime for the future.
How do you feel about that trade clause they gave him too?
Bro, like that's exactly what I'm saying. It's like they're the biggest losers. Well, yeah. You know who's the biggest winner? Beal. Because he just cashed in, man. He's there playing for his money. I mean, like, I think about the Spurs a little bit. So this is what the Spurs did with Kawhi. You know, they tried to win with DeRozan when they traded him. And I guess he's a decent Beal comparison. But man, they just make me laugh, man. You know, the Spurs finally traded Murray. They got a bunch of first-round picks from it. You know, it's a fresh start. If Washington eventually came to that same conclusion with Beal, maybe they'd be on a better track. But at the moment right now, Porzingis is making, I don't know how much money, like $80 million or something.
Per year, it's like 27.
But okay. So per year, about $27 with that. You're paying Porzingis, you're paying Beal that money. There's just no success with that group. I'm sorry. The Wizards are my biggest losers. And I'd be surprised if there's anybody lower than that.
And real quick,
sorry. Oh, go ahead. No, go ahead.
Real
John,
quick, you look at Orlando, it was a similar thing of Vucevic, where the difference was Orlando sucked, which is why them going for that 8th seed was a little bit exciting for the fans because they promised them to be back in the playoffs. Mm-hmm. Washington, on the other hand, made the playoffs almost year in and year out with John Wall and Brad. And that was one of the most fun backcourts duos, one of the best times in the franchise history. But when you're a team that, unlike Orlando, has had the success, you've been to the playoffs, the fans have seen it, they've been able to feel it, but you didn't make it to the conference finals. In fact, you haven't won 50 games, I said this before, in over 45 years. You got to look at the analog. Indiana was in a similar position. They say, you know what, we're doing Sabonis, we're going to build around Halliburton, and they got an owner who's older, he wants to win now. Mm-hmm. Orlando, they promised the fans they were going to win. It fell apart with Vucevic. They said, look, guys, we're going to do this all over again. We know we said the rebuild would be over in 4 years, and we're actually rebuilding again. You have to do what's best for your franchise. The cute little BS of, yay, we're keeping Bradley Beal. It's going to be so much fun winning 37 games every year. What are you doing? It's the most pathetic thing in pro sports, honestly. When you have your owner go from being like, we're going to compete for a title to we're going to compete for a playoff spot, even though we've done this the last 7 years. And keep in mind, this team hasn't made the playoffs since 2018, 2019. You've been a lottery team, and they're not giving themselves an actual bite at the apple, you know? Because with Bradley, you're not going to be one of the worst teams unless he's dealing with injuries the way he was last season. But then you bring in Porzingis, another good player who's dealing with injuries. The collective of those two playing together, you're not going to have a top lottery pick unless you get super lucky. So you're not giving yourself a chance at butting at the apple to get a top 5 pick. And you look at how they got Wall, how they got Beal, Otto Porter. Sure, they had their misses and a Jan, Vesely.
No.
But overall, you don't give yourself a chance to bet at the apple. You're failing your fans. And for any of the fans out there in Washington that are still supporting the team through this, I don't know why you're doing it, because this franchise should be ashamed of themselves. Maybe they try to move Beal on his current contract, But guess what? Since you gave him that little fruity trade clause, if he doesn't want to go to that place, you can't move him. And you would think after their GM and Tommy Shepard did a masterful job moving John Wall and Russell Westbrook, he would have prioritized that flexibility, right? And honestly, I think that $200 million contract would have been enough for Brad. The fact they also gave him a trade clause, they lose all that versatility in moving him.
Yep.
And now they're doing the same BS where they're trying to build around him, move on while he's got value because this rebuild is inevitable. And the longer you delay it, the more you fail your fans. And this is the exact example of how you don't run a sports franchise. You look right in Washington, D.C.
So, for my biggest, and I just want to say I do agree with you guys. Washington has been a loser since John Wall got injured and couldn't play for a long time. And I agree that backcourt was just electric. I mean, John Wall and Bradley Beal, and I do hold a little bit. I'm not a Washington fan, but I do kind of slight KD. This is just a little tangent. I'm going to go on for a second. For KD, when he left OKC and went to Golden State, I kind of was like, yo, KD, if you want to prove something, dude, go to your hometown Washington Wizards. Go play with John Wall and Bradley Beal. That's a big three right there.
The hardest coach to get him. The hired Scott Brooks just for him to do whatever he wanted there.
Yeah, go win a championship there. Don't go to a team that was already built. Go to your hometown team and win a championship for Washington. You know how much credit you would have got if you won a championship as the guy in Washington?
That was a team.
They're
a piece away too. I don't want to cut you off, but like that Washington team, they're almost winning 50 games. And if you put KD in that mix, oh my God.
The battles between them and the Cavaliers would have been incredible.
Hell yeah.
But that's neither here nor there, right? My biggest loser is not a team. It's a player. And his name is Kyrie Irving. Because Kyrie Irving, for how smart he is, he made such a stupid decision. The guy wanted out of Brooklyn. The guy wanted to go to LA, or wants to go to LA with LeBron. From what all reports are saying, he wants to go to LA. Why did you accept your player option then? Decline it. Now the Lakers don't have to try and freaking make a Kyrie for Westbrook trade work because it does not work. It doesn't compute. Even if you add the 27 first-round pick and the 29 first-round pick, that doesn't make any sense for the Lakers or the Nets. That's 5-7 years from now. LeBron's going to be retired by then. Kyrie will probably be retired by the time the 27 or 29th pick comes around. Kyrie should have declined that player option. Now he can sign a deal with the Lakers when the Lakers get rid of Westbrook, because all they would have had to do was find a sucker, and there's a sucker born every day, to take Westbrook's contract. They would have had to deal with him. Maybe they buy him out. Maybe they let him play for you, whatever. And now you get Kyrie on the Lakers. And you don't have to give anything up except for the guy that you want to get rid of. I just look at it and I say, what the hell was that? Like, why did you accept your player option?
How do you guys think Joseph Tsai, the Nets owner, feels about Kyrie?
Oh,
he's probably sick and tired of him. He's probably like, God, just why?
From all the reports, he's like, Tsai is like very much a guy that wants reliability in his business, and when the product isn't even going to show, he's just like, get this guy off my team. I don't care if we go back to the D'Angelo Russell days. I've had enough of paying this dude. And I guess Kyrie wants some of that money back because he lost a lot last year not playing in home games or games at all to start the first 2 months. So, hey, go get that bag. But Brooklyn doesn't want you, And if Brooklyn doesn't want you, I mean, Lakers are the only team that does.
Mm-hmm.
He's not won a championship in Brooklyn. Just like the Suns, that championship window is closed, I think, honestly. Even though they got T.J. Warren and Royce O'Neal, I think with Steve Nash, there's not enough to say in that Eastern Conference that they're going to actually be able to win 3 playoff series. You got Boston, you got Philadelphia,
Milwaukee, Miami.
Still got Miami. Still have Atlanta, who have maybe the best backcourt in the conference.
Chicago.
Chicago will be healthy. Cleveland will be healthy. I think Cleveland's a better team than Brooklyn with how they're going to grow. A lot of people won't agree with that, but I'm pretty high on Darius and Evan Mobley. My biggest offseason loser, first off, obviously, Wizards, they actually had a good, like, in terms of team building, Monte Morris they picked up for KCP. I thought that was a really good move. They were so stacked at the wing positions, all of the wings they've drafted in Denny Avila, Rui Hachimura, Corey Kispert, there was enough minutes for all those guys. You have Kyle Kuzma in the mix. So by trading KCP, you open up minutes for all those lottery picks. Monte Morris is a starting point guard to me. I think he's one of the 30 best. He's really good. Shot making, not can turn over the ball, disciplined, and knows his role. And then you add in Will Barton. I forgot they have him. Oh, never mind. That blows up my last point because I forgot. Will Barton's a wing player. That guess what? Will be playing more than KCP. So by trading KCP, you bring in another wing player that's going to take away minutes from all of those lottery picks. And I look at Denny Avila. Do you guys think there's any star potential? Because I just think he's a fine role player.
That's it. I feel like that's
Yeah.
a ceiling.
I'm sorry, I missed the name.
Denny Avila. He's like, he's solid. I think he's a very good defender, high IQ, decent passer. He can't shoot or score. I look at Rui Hachimura. He reminds me of Jabari Parker. Corey Kispert, little Joe Harris. So if you got Joe Harris, Jabari Parker, and let's say Nick Batum, and then Johnny Davis, he came in Summer League and stunk it up. I think Davis will be a tough shot-making guard that relies on mid-range, but he has to become a better three-point shooter. The Wizards' young core is not good enough, and there's not enough support around your big three or your big four with Kuzma. And like Barton's a good player. He's fine. He's not going to do anything in the playoffs. He's going to stink it up probably. They're just doing everything wrong. I think their GM's really good at his job. Like I said, he traded two of the worst contracts in basketball, but you're not getting lottery picks. You haven't drafted well either. This is a team that could have drafted Tyrese Halliburton. They could have. We talk about the Suns not taking him. Denny Avila, that's just another wing player. Like they didn't need that. So
are you saying the Wizards are your biggest loser with me?
I think they are the biggest loser in the Eastern Conference. The biggest loser in the Western Conference is another team that I thought had a really good offseason. There's two I actually got. Portland's number one, and number two is Phoenix. The Suns, they brought in from Minnesota, Josh Okogie. They brought in from Golden State, Damian Lee. They added end of the reserve players, but they have no draft picks coming in, no undrafted free agents. Deandre Ayton's relationship may be fractured with Monty Williams. We won't really know until the season starts. And while Chris Paul's only going to be a year older, you didn't get better as a team. Jay Crowder's on an expiring contract. There's that Landry Shaman extension. He doesn't really provide anything. You need a backup point guard. You don't have that. The Suns, they're just regressing when the rest of the league is getting better. I look at the moves Denver made, getting KCP. He fits in perfectly. Bruce Brown's another wing player that can defend if it's an awesome. They had an awesome offseason. You know they're going to be healthy. Same with the Warriors, the Clippers. The Suns, they're only getting worse and falling down the standings. That's one of my teams. Portland made some pretty good moves. That's the team I was talking about. Jeremy Grant's a very good wing. Josh Hart, second year at the team. They have young players. Of course, you add in what's-his-face. Gary Payton II, my apologies to call him what's-his-face, from Oregon State. I think those are really good moves, but that's not a playoff team. Dame doesn't have the support of a number two. His second-best teammate's Anthony Simons. That's C.J. McCollum and him 2.0. You got a better defense, but you only got one big man. This is a team trying to be Golden State. Chauncey Billups wants to play an aggressive style defense, and I think with the players they added, they can play very aggressive. And honestly, I think they'll be a top 12 or top 15 defense, even with that small backcourt. They'll be good enough. But I say this is a playing team. They're not going to be a top 6 seed. And when I look at them having to win 2 games against a squad like Memphis or the Suns will be in the play-in probably, because keep in mind, Jaren Jackson is going to miss the start of the season. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs, and they're in the situation where they want to pay a luxury tax. But if you're not making the postseason and you're spending all this money on a team that's not good, and you're going to be at the end of the lottery, you got to move Damian Lillard soon. I think for the franchise, as cool as it is to have that Mr. Trailblazer at the end of his career, they're really in no man's land, just like the Wizards. The difference is they're in a better position. They've actually made the conference finals. They've won 50 games, and there's a little bit more hope of Dame being an actual All-NBA player, unlike Bradley Beal. then maybe they can make the playoffs and be competitive with a player that's much better. So those are my 3 teams, you know. Honestly,
Can't.
the biggest loser as a player might be Miles Turner, honestly. Because he just is stuck in Indiana, and they couldn't make it more obvious how much they don't want him. I feel terrible for that guy. Imagine going to the facility every single day for a franchise that's had you on the trade block for years. And sure, they're paying you well, but they just try to get rid of you for Deandre Ayton. They're trying to rebuild, and you're 25. You don't really fit this thing. I think for him, the poor guy, just send him to Miami, you know? It'd be tough. He gives me a little bit of Whiteside vibes, Turner at the shot blocks. I don't think he's really as good of a rim protector as those stats may suggest, but I think he'd be really good playing with Bam, a guy that can open the floor a little bit. He's only shot 34% from 3, but he can make shots and play the 5. That allows Bam 12 million, I think,
No,
in the early teens.
That's too much. That's too much.
But he can play the 5, so Bam can play the 4. You don't think so?
No,
I think you need a center that can space the floor and play the 5.
That's not what we need in Miami.
What do you need? A score, yes, but
we need a score. We need a number 1.
Yeah, you need a supernova offensive player, but the second thing you need is a center that can make it easier on Bam to play the 4. I think that's the next thing.
Well, that's why I didn't want us to re-sign Dwayne Dedmon and for us to go get a better backup center. But
he looked so cooked in that Celtics series. You guys saw that,
back
right?
with Dwayne Dedmon, so I mean,
well, you got Omar Yurtseven. He's going to be your backup.
Who?
Omar Yurtseven.
Oh, Yurtseven
from Georgetown. Yeah, Yurtseven.
Yeah. We'll see. I mean, I think they like him. They definitely want to develop him, but we'll see if he's ready for this upcoming season because he's got. I mean, I think he's 7'1", maybe. He's a 7-footer. He's a 7-footer. He's big.
Big rebounder.
That could be effective.
Guy.
I mean, he's got the younger legs than for what Dwayne Dedmon. And Dwayne Dedmon's, I don't even know how old he is.
31, 32.
For a while. So
Turner's making $17.5 million, by the way.
Yeah, those legs ain't what they used to be for Dwayne.
Not at all.
They're not.
Yeah, you guys saw him chasing level all those ball screens, getting absolutely blown by Jalen.
Yeah, we're looking for. I just really want Donovan Mitchell, but we can get into the Heat.
All right, enough of that because they're not right. The Knicks are the number 1 suitor, so they can give up.
Yes, we are.
Don't do that. Donovan Mitchell, I tweeted this. Don't do that. You will regret it for the rest of your career if you go to New York.
Nah, legacies aren't built in Miami, buddy. They're built.
Oh, really? Really? They're not?
They're built in the Mecca.
Talk Dwayne Wade, the 3rd greatest shooting guard of all time. Talk LeBron winning his first 2 titles in Miami.
Could you imagine if LeBron won his first 2 titles in New York? Huh.
They were gonna go to New York. Right?
That
was an option, but guess what? Guess why they didn't go?
Yes, I know. Believe me, I know.
James Dolan, who I've been telling you since we met, is the worst owner.
This isn't a Knicks conversation. I just wanted to.
There are guys that have a say about that. Who has a better future, Miami or New York?
Miami.
Really?
I feel like Miami is closer to their window being closed than the Knicks are.
No, because we have leadership and stability that you do not have. And you're desperately grabbing to try and get. You haven't had that for years.
Listen, I'm just saying we see the sun right now, and we're about to open the window. So
but guess what? We in South Beach, we see the sun all the time.
Yeah, and a lot of rain.
Ain't no rain.
When Jimmy Butler's making like $52 million at 36, and Kyle Lowry is still going to be on your books a year before that.
We don't know if Kyle Lowry's still going to be on the books.
Okay, it's going to be pretty hard to move off of him. And Duncan Robinson is making almost $20 million.
Like I said, there's a Sunday born every day, though.
I think with Eric Spoelstra, you guys got the coaching advantage by a mile. But the Knicks are going to have RJ. RJ will develop into a player better than any perimeter guy that was alongside Donovan in Utah. Jalen Brunson can be a number 2 scorer. He showed that in Dallas. I think that trio, the 3 of them, so long as RJ, if he can get enough opportunity to develop, that'd be the biggest question. I think that'd be better than Donovan, Bam, and who else? You're giving up all your draft picks. You're going to give up Jovic. I just think
Donovan have any draft picks to begin with.
You guys,
Yeah, we got like
All
nothing.
pick swaps is what I'm saying. So you don't even have any to use.
We haven't really been using that many draft picks anyway. I mean, we've succeeded on Bam and Tyler Hero, but I mean, people forget
Hero
about
would be
Justice
gone.
Winslow.
I just think that next big three would be pretty good. I think RJ may lose a lot of opportunity to grow, but that's the highest profile guy.
I think you're missing with Jimmy. Jimmy's not, and we've had this argument about Donovan Mitchell with the athleticism, and it deteriorates. Jimmy Butler's wasn't built off of his athleticism. So I mean, he can still be Jimmy Butler into his late 30s. I have no qualms with that. Bam Adebayo is just going to get better. I mean, if he develops that mid-range shot as like a consistent weapon, he's going to be just fine.
Okay, so are those your two that you're relying on?
That's
right now, we are. I mean,
right
Bam is the Bam. Yeah, for the future. I mean, he's not going to be the best player, but he's going to be number 2 or 3 depending on who's with him. Jimmy is for the recent near future.
And the Knicks are on the come up.
They're not on the come up. What are you talking about?
They need a coach before they're actually on the come up.
We were just the first. We were number 1 seed last year.
And that's like I said, your window is slowly closing.
Where?
How old is Jimmy Butler?
He actually made a great point about Jimmy, though. Jimmy is so crafty in the way he scores. He's got the ninja cuts, the up fakes. He can get to the foul line. Yeah, he relies a lot on his burst, but he's so creative in the ways he can get to the rim and score from mid-range. I think in 3 years, Jimmy's still going to be a high-level starter and one of the best wing defenders. He already is at 32.
John, in 3 years.
And Jimmy can impact the game without scoring. We've seen that.
In 3 years, does Miami have a
space
championship?
And I said Miami's winning a championship in the next 5 years.
I asked John because I knew you were going to say yes.
Yeah, well,
I would say no because your calling card is how well you can develop young players, all the undrafted guys. But I think there's a certain limit when you don't have the supernova. And when you have the supernova in a place like Miami, oh my goodness.
Well, we're going to get one.
Ooh. Yeah, you said about Giannis and how that worked with the Bam extension. You guys did in a creative way can extend him or sign Giannis.
Giannis wanted to stay in Milwaukee. There was nothing we could do about that.
That's the point. You say you do until you can't, and it's over. I'm just saying.
Yeah, but Milwaukee actually did the necessary steps to build with Giannis to become a better team. Utah has not done that with Donovan Mitchell. So there's no reason for him to stay there.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just saying when it comes to Danny Ainge, he's gonna take the best offer. The Knicks have more draft picks. They have better draft picks.
I can't. I'm not gonna.
Truth be told, I would
argue that point that New York doesn't have a better offer on the table. They do. I can't argue that. But Pat Riley is the godfather for a reason. He's found ways to do things in other areas.
This is Danny Ainge. This is not Kevin McHale. I look at this and I say to myself, if I'm Danny Ainge, I would much rather Quentin Grimes, Obi Toppin, Cam Reddish, and Emmanuel Quickley than Jovic, Tyler Hero, and just less picks. Like that's your offer.
That's why you would have to add another team.
And correct me if I'm wrong, you guys already gave Jovic his rookie extension, so you wouldn't be able to move him. I think you did. So you wouldn't be able to Jovic, the first round pick out of Serbia.
Oh yeah, no, you can't trade recently
yeah, he got his extension, I'm pretty sure. Let's see. Yep. So you wouldn't be able to move him either.
Yeah. I don't expect to move him.
With Pat Riley there, I'll always believe that Miami is going to put together a competitive team. I'll never knock that. But I do believe there is a window and it is closing, much like Phoenix. Not saying I think you guys have a way better roster right now, but I think you're more complete. But like I said, you guys, you need that scorer. You know you need the scorer. And if the Knicks are going to get him, where are you going to get it from?
Other people.
Other people? I really don't know what guard to be on the market because I don't think Booker would be there. I think Booker's Mr. Phoenix. I don't see him ever leaving, to be honest with you guys.
Okay. I don't know who because I can't give you a name, but listen, I know that Pat Riley's been trying to make a move for a couple of years now, a big move to get a big time player on there. So I have all the faith in the world in him to get a deal done for someone who I don't know. We're gonna have to wait and see and find out. Could it be KD? Maybe. Donovan Mitchell could be. Kyrie, not likely, but on the table. Who knows?
So
Only time will tell.
that was our prelude to check it up in a way, fellas. Yeah, that was I didn't really expect us to get into a Donovan Mitchell Heat versus Knicks debate, but there we are. We just had it for like what, the third time?
Yeah.
Speaking of we actually, I think I already asked you guys to rank the three. This is my check it up. I'm gonna ask you guys to rank a trio. I want to know what you guys think. So the first one is from the 2020 draft class: LaMelo Ball, Tyrese Halliburton, and Tyrese Maxey. Rank those three:
Repeat.
Tyrese Maxey, LaMelo Ball, and Tyrese Halliburton.
Melo, Maxey, Halliburton.
Oh,
I think that's fair. I could agree with that.
I think Halliburton right now might be better than LaMelo
No.
because as a scorer, I trust him more in the pick and roll than LaMelo,
No.
and as a shot maker, Halliburton's a lead already from mid range. Neither guy can get to the rim, and from 3-point, they're around the same. I
LaMelo's
think.
going to be special.
Okay.
Halliburton's not.
Halliburton will be special,
No.
but I do see
No.
LaMelo.
Halliburton, I
into a
think,
straight-up
will be
superstar.
a all-star caliber player consistently. LaMelo Ball is going to be a star, possibly borderline superstar.
I would have actually. Right now, I think Tyrese Maxey is right on LaMelo's level. I think I had Maxey last, though. LaMelo has the length to be a good defender, but just like Tyrese, he gets pushed around. Now they're good on that end.
Only like 22 years old.
But they're
21.
weak. They don't have the frame. They're gonna get pushed around in switches. They're not good defenders. I think LaMelo has more upside just because he's like 6'8". Tyrese is 6'5". The other guy's a good defender right now. And honestly, unlike Lonzo, I don't really see LaMelo buying in as a defender because Lonzo is a role player. You know, he has to do that to stay in the league.
LaMelo is more of an off-ball defender. Better off-ball defender.
Yeah.
Where he can jump passing lanes.
How about in the playoffs when bigger wins try to attack him on switches?
He's 22, 23 years old, John, right now. I'm projecting
21.
for the future.
Yeah,
LaMelo will get there at that point. Trust me. We'll be talking about it in a couple of years, and you'll be saying, Brandon, you were correct. LaMelo Ball is special.
I think LaMelo is special. I think Tyrese is special as well, though, man. I had a commenter say this. I made a video. Someone was saying, one of my boys, that Tyrese will be a top 5 point guard. I was like, I don't know about that. But then a commenter said, he has all the same traits that Darius Garland has. He's a year, how do I word this? He came into the league a year later than Darius. Tyrese never had the chance to actually run an offense. And when he did, he was giving Philadelphia almost 40 points. And he was averaging almost 13, 12 assists at certain parts of the season. He's a better playmaker right now. In terms of scoring, he's better from mid-range. So LaMelo has that part of his game as well. Tyrese is elite from mid-range. That's a huge part of his game. He's got the floater just like LaMelo. He can knock that down. Those are two very similar players. I think LaMelo has a little bit more upside because he's bigger and he's a more creative passer. But I think with Tyrese, he's a little bit more functional.
He's 20, my bad. LaMelo is 20 years
old. Turning 21 in August, correct?
Yeah, he's a day after my birthday.
Really?
Yeah,
what
August
day?
22nd.
Nice.
It's his birthday. I'm 21st.
Yeah, Halliburton's only 22. He's a year older. And he's just now getting the keys to an offense.
Look at the jump. I just looked at his stats. Look at the jump LaMelo Ball made from first season to second season. He went from 15.7 points to 20 points a game. He went from 6.1 assists to 7.6 assists. He went from 5.9 rebounds to 6.7 rebounds. Free throw percentage went from 75.8% to 87.2. 3-point percentage went from 35.2 to 38.9. And field goal percentage was kind of similar, around 43%. So, I mean, he's already showing the jumps right there. Listen, when this whole Ball thing started, right, with the triple Bs and whatnot, LeVar was coming out and Lonzo was coming out. Mm-hmm. LeVar said, listen, Lonzo's great. LiAngelo's really good, right? But the third kid is the special one. That's the one you need to worry about. He said this in the beginning. LeVar Ball said this. He said, no, y'all need to worry about LaMelo because he's the one. And he's proved himself right. This kid, Lonzo's the quiet, lean back, laid back guy. He doesn't really, talk a lot, get involved in all that stuff. LaMelo is the brash one. LaMelo takes after his dad, LeVar. he's brash, he's talking, he's confident, he's ready to get in there, he's swaggering out, he's doing between the legs alley oops and whatnot. You know what I mean? This kid, he's trust me, you'll be saying it in a couple of years that this kid is on another level than other people.
I didn't say LaMelo's not special, but I do want to tell you, this is how we're getting this. Tyrese in Indiana averaged 10 assists and shot 50-40-85. That was what he was doing when he had the offense. Justin, do you got a little NBA or even MLB? Check it up because we can talk some baseball right now.
Yeah. I got a little something for MLB talk. So obviously, home run derby just passed. Juan Soto won. All Star game passed. My boy Big G brought home the All Star game MVP. You know, he's won an MVP with Miami. Now he's won an All Star game MVP with the Yankees. I'm hoping this season he brings home World Series MVP. But there's a name that I want to highlight that I mentioned, our home run derby winner, Juan Soto. So the second half of the season of baseball is fast approaching. It starts tomorrow. Yankees kick it off with a doubleheader in Houston. That's exciting. Possible ALCS matchup. Another rematch. The Yankees need to come out on top this time. But let me get to my point. Juan Soto, one of the most phenomenal players in baseball today. 23 years old, two-time All-Star, and a World Series champion. Turned down a 14-year, $440 million extension from the Washington Nationals. The guy knows his worth, and he wants to go get his money. This more so seems like the Washington Nationals are going to push to trade Juan Soto if they believe they cannot keep him. Now, I repeat, he's 23 years old. With 2.5 years left until he hits free agency, the package that they would receive to get Juan Soto out of Washington has to be huge. And now I've been looking on Twitter and I've been hearing things on TV about teams being hesitant to make this trade for Juan Soto. Now I'm just going to make this very clear. There isn't a prospect in baseball that's worth holding over trading for Juan Soto. Not a single prospect. He is 23 years old and at the moment on a Hall of Fame track. If you can get that bat, you go get it. If you're the Yankees, if you're the Mets, if you're the Dodgers, if you're the Cardinals, and you can make the move, don't sleep on it. You go get him. Juan Soto is a stud.
I'm looking at it now. He batted .333 in the 2019 World Series. I know that's like kind of like field goal percentage for basketball, kind of batting average, right? His on base was 440.
That's one of the craziest things to me. So at 23 years old, he's having what's considered a down year for Juan Soto. He's batting .250. Okay, so what? But his OPS is a 901. His on base percentage is above 400. He's slugging .497. The guy has 20 bombs. Like when he turned down that contract, the Nationals didn't charter him a private flight to the All Star game, so he flew commercial. Get him out of Washington, man. It's time to get him in a place like New York. Get him in a place like LA.
The Yankees? I always call them the Knicks.
Hey, the Yankees.
The Yankees could get him. Damn.
They have the prospects to do it. But like I said, the Yankees' top prospect, or one of their top prospects, is center fielder Jason Dominguez. He's had comparisons to Mickey Mantle, switch hitter. And the nickname is the Martian. He's a stud. But if you can get Juan Soto, a sure thing. Prospects are all question marks, much like football, much like basketball. Prospects are all question marks. Your draft picks are question marks. You don't know what they're going to pan out to be. You could have a number 2 pick, and you may never see that guy play Major League Baseball. You never know.
Damn.
So if you know for certain what you're getting at this age, you go after it. Absolutely. That's all I got for you guys. This is going to be the deadline is August 2nd. Nationals don't have to trade him right now, but the package that they'd get if they do, hard to turn down.
Where are they in the standings?
Washington?
Yeah.
I believe they're last in the NL East.
Yeah, they're 31-63. They suck. Oh my God. It's been rough for Washington outside the 2019 title. I mean, you look at the Commanders and then the Wizards, who we just absolutely crapped on. Damn, dude. Outside that one title, they've had nothing.
And it's a true shame.
The Capitals won it too, right?
The Capitals won a couple of years. Yeah.
Yep.
Recently. But it's a real shame. You had Bryce Harper, he's gone. Signed with your division rival Philly. You had Max Scherzer. Now he signed with the New York Mets, your division rival. You extended Steven Strasburg, and at the moment, that's been one of the worst contracts in baseball. You signed Patrick Corbin, he got you a World Series, but since then, he hasn't been the man that you've paid for. Washington is just going down. It's time for rebuild, but with a trade of Juan Soto, you'd be able to get MLB ready players and top of the line prospects. I see there's no benefit to Washington keeping Juan Soto at the moment right now. If you can't re-sign him to that big deal, if he can turn down 14 years, $440 million, he doesn't want to be there. He wants to be elsewhere.
That's crazy. That's really how baseball is, man. The player empowerment, I guess. That's $30 million over the next decade and a half. That's nuts. If it was 420, right? Or 440?
440.
That's over. Yeah, it's like 31, 32 million, man. Over a decade. Damn.
Hey, man, there's a lot of teams that are in the mix. They're preparing. Apparently, I heard this morning that there's a couple teams preparing offers to send over to Washington, the Yankees being one of them. Man, could you imagine Aaron Judge and Juan Soto in the same outfields for a season?
How about the Mets? The Mets have some prospects. I know they got the money, right?
Yeah, so the Mets have the money and they have the prospects to make the move. But the biggest question is, would Washington want to trade their star to their division rival, who's going to be there, probably sign a contract north of 10 years? So I don't know if they want to deal with that in division. But if you can get the prospects, why not? Not.
Brian, do you have anything?
That's all I got.
Huh?
Do you have anything before I cap this thing off?
Yeah. So, like Justin did, took it to one of his favorite sports. I'm gonna take it to one of my favorite sports that we don't talk about, but is one of my passions. It's mixed martial arts. So I want to talk about the UFC card coming up in this Saturday, July 23rd. Now, this is going to be them back in the UK for the second time this year. They just went back to the UK in March earlier this year for the first time since the pandemic happened. And all I got to say is, if you watch this card on Saturday afternoon, because the prelims start at 12 and then the main card starts at 3 p.m. If you watch this card, what you're going to notice and what you're going to feel is the passion and how crazy the UK crowd is. These English fans go nuts. You feel it through your TV, especially when their people are fighting. So I just want to run through a couple of fights that are ones that you should look out for if you are going to watch this. My homegirl, Molly McCann, who's become one of my favorite fighters in the UFC. Her nickname's the Meatball. She's she's 5'4". She's got a 62-inch reach, but she just fights like a dynamo. Okay, so her last performance in March, if you look it up, maybe you saw it on highlight clips. She did a spinning back elbow that absolutely obliterated this one girl, sent her to the shadow realm. All right. So that's a fight you got to look out for. Alexander Gustafsson is coming back. He's a former title challenger who, if not for John Jones and Daniel Cormier, would have probably been the light heavyweight champion of the world. Then you got the newbie coming in, the new prospect, one of the futures of this sport, Patty the Batty Pimblett. I don't know if you've heard of him, but you guys might have if you're a fan of Barstool, because he signed to Barstool. Patty is what he could possibly be the next Conor McGregor in terms of international stardom and stardom around the world. This kid, he's got a mouth on him. He loves to trash talk. He's already said that his opponent coming up, that he's going to knock his freaking head off his shoulders, and he's going to teabag him like they did back in Modern Warfare 2. So you just got to love this kid. If you listen to him talk, you watch him. If you're a wrestling fan, I know Justin is and was. He's got the Owen Hart haircut with the bowl haircut.
I'm looking at a picture right now, too.
Yeah, he looks just like Owen Hart. It's hilarious. Patty the Batty is going to be special. And then the main event is Tom Aspinall versus Curtis Blades. These are two heavyweights colliding. Both, I think, top 10 in the world right now. Curtis Blades is a bona fide wrestler who loves to cut you up with elbows. His nickname is Razor.